All righty. Welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington, serving entrepreneurs throughout the US and the world. Today, I am so excited for this guest. It's actually taken, over a year, Brad, I'm going to say, to get you on the podcast. So thank you.
All my fault, by the way, just to be
No,
clear.
no.
All my fault.
Talking about guts and grit and right. So I'm just going to put a plug. I am persistent. So I was not going to let Brad off the hook very easily. So I kept with you and now here you are. No, but seriously, super glad to have you here. For those that don't know Brad, this is going to be such a fun conversation. Brad and I crossed paths. Do I say it out loud? 6-7 years ago now. It was pretty early in the launch of my second business. And so it's been really, really fun to be in touch with Brad over the years. For those of you that don't know Brad Martineau is the co-founder and CEO of 6th Division. He is amazing. And here's why. He was the 6th employee at Heap. This was back when it was called Infusionsoft. I still, by the way, call it Infusionsoft. I'm just going to say that.
Like I have to catch myself every time.
I can't stop, won't stop. So he was one of the original Infusionsoft team members. He was a part of the key leadership team that grew it to over 150 employees.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you. How long is that intro that they sent you? Or do we have like 2 more paragraphs still?
A couple paragraphs. Yeah.
Okay, no. We're not.
Do you want to hit the highlights? Hit the highlights.
No. We don't need any of those highlights. Look. I'm married. I have 5 kids. I play and coach basketball. I got a couple of businesses, and I'm a nerd with systems and how to organize and build a business that serves your life. That's about all you need to know. And we do not need to read. I told them to do the simple version, not copy and paste the one that we wrote way too long ago. That's way too long. So we're going to spare.
Gosh.
You're welcome, by the way, everybody, that we cut that intro off, because it'd have been like 20 minutes later. We're like, hey, well, let's hear what he has to say. Anyway.
No, Brad, I love that. That you actually just received the perfect introduction from Brad. So, Brad, you're awesome. I'm so happy to have you here. I can attest to, first of all, having watched part of your journey, but been a part of it at a time where I was trying to figure out automation and this piece where it's like, and that was early for me. Like I needed your support, and the thing that sticks with me from that time that I spent with you, because for those of you that don't know, Brad and I crossed paths at an Infusionsoft conference. I heard you speak and I was like, oh, I had already I had already had an account with Infusionsoft for like a year. Yep. Really was making my way around the basics, but not doing much with it.
Right.
So I signed up for your services, and then a few months later was down at your headquarters going through a full week-long boot camp or something. I can't remember what you called it at the time.
Yeah, I think it was Launchpad or something. No, Foundation Launchpad. I don't know. Anyway, it was a thing.
Foundation. No, I think it was like a full 2 or 3 days, like pretty intense. And it was awesome. The benefit of that experience was, first of all, seeing you walk the talk, right? Actually implement automation and a lot of what you taught that weekend in the way that you welcomed people into your services, both digitally and in real life, right? Because I got to see both, go through the experience, the follow-up. Like there's so much that people could benefit from by having an experience with a business like yours. So I've always been a super fan, and now here you are, and I'm so glad to be reconnecting.
Well, thank you. I am very excited to be here. And I love that you love the little details around legal stuff that I don't have the brain for or any of the other stuff for, because you have helped us a ton of that. So excited to be here. And I'm glad that we finally made it. Anyway, we're here. So
we're here. So let's backtrack a little bit. I always like to hear kind of people's origin stories. How did you get into business? I mean, I know at some point you landed at Infusionsoft, right? So take us back a little bit in your journey.
All right. So graduated high school, went on a mission for my church, came home, got married a couple months later to my wife. We'll be 21 as a married couple in next week. Next week as of the recording of this, which means probably a while ago by the time you're hearing this, but got married. I was doing some stuff with my dad that was like this little side business, but it was really more my dad's aspirations of working with his kids until he realized that we hadn't learned enough to know how to go make money. And he was just basically had us on payroll. So had our first kid. And then I ended up working for 2.5 years at the University of Phoenix as an admissions counselor, which is just code for a sales rep. It was 2.5 years too long. And then I was talking with my brothers and they're like, yeah, we started the software company. Our support rep's leaving. We need somebody. So I walked away from full benefits and like $35,000 a year to no benefits and like 28, maybe. It might have even been 22. It's like made no sense. I already had a couple of kids at that point. But I jumped over. I had no idea what like CRM was. I had no idea what marketing. I didn't know what small business was. I was just like, get me out of here. So that was Infusionsoft early on back in the day, back when it wasn't called, the company was called Infusionsoft, but the product was called Manage Pro CRM and Mortgage Pro CRM. Anyway, for any old time users, they'll get a crack out of that. That's like way back in the day.
I was gonna say, I don't think I've even ever heard that.
Yeah. So I was there. I ended up being there for probably 8 years, I think. I was the 6th employee there. I got to see it grow to like 150 or so. And I did a lot of work with clients. And while I was there, I discovered a couple of things about myself. Believe it or not, I didn't have everything figured out when I was 21. So
you didn't? Weird.
I know, I'm not even when I was 23. But so I figured out a couple of things about myself. One, I fell in love with entrepreneurship and small business. There is like and my favorite quote about entrepreneurship, my favorite definition. I was trying to remember the guy's name and I'm going to get it wrong. Anyway, he started like a ride sharing type thing. But he said, entrepreneurs are the people that go out and solve problems instead of sitting around and waiting for somebody to do it for them. And I'm like, yes. So that's why so I fell in love with entrepreneurs and I sort of uncovered, and I knew this because I'm like a systematic thinker in terms of how I think about stuff. But when I got introduced to software, I started to realize like it really pulled out this like, oh, software, systems, and entrepreneurs. And like, if I could triangulate like with the Venn diagram, if I could just say like, where's the biggest overlap in my life, it would be those things. Like I love software. I got a software company. I love systems, which is primarily what we're doing at 6th Division. And then I love entrepreneurs. And that's what lives right at the end. Now there's like this basketball thing over here that's not really related to that, but that's it. So I realized about myself, like, man, I love this. And what I saw while I was there is you got lots of entrepreneurs that are very similar to yours. Believe it or not, you're not the only person that had it for a while and didn't use it very much. It's not just you. So you can, in case you had any head trash around that, you're okay. So what I saw, because I was in the front lines with clients trying to help them get the software up and going. And what I realized is they had a really powerful tool, but nobody had ever taught them. And there's no class around how to think in terms of systems. And so they'd get into a software tool that's designed to help you execute systems. But if you can't think in systems and create a plan in systems, the software does nothing. Like if you don't know math, the calculator is useless, right? So ultimately, I think it was March of 2010. Infusionsoft at the time hit a rough patch. They laid off 10% of the company. I was included in that. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew Infusionsoft better than anybody in the world. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go do this thing. So we started a company. It was 6th Division. At that point, I had a different name for it. It was just me. And then I met with my partner. We created 6th Division a couple years later. But the whole purpose was and I still have the initial vision document that we put together in late 2011, was to demystify what it takes to leverage marketing automation, which were the terms at the time, right? So like, how do we make it simple that anybody can come through and there's just a step-by-step checklist process of here's how we use this. So, I mean, there are so many stories from the start of that company. Like, it sounds great. Here's the great version. We started April of 2012 is when we started actually December of 2011, made no money for the first 3 or 4 months. And then in April, we went to InfusionCon. We had an offer there. We sold a ton of stuff. And then from there, April through the end of the year, we did $1 million in our first year. 3 or 4 years later, we had grown it to $3 million. And everyone's like, oh, that's amazing. So interesting story about that. When you're selling services and you go to $1 million really fast, you don't see your family very much until you figure out some systems about how to run it. So we get to the end of the first year, and of course, we're doing annual planning. And what's the goal? We got to double. And I was like, hold on a second, because I don't want to double that. So we actually, like, literally, we said double it. And then we stopped and said, wait a minute, what if? This is a really good question, by the way. Like, what if we didn't? What if instead of that, we made a penny more, but we cut our time in half? And so we shifted. That was 2013, our 2013 objective. There was a distinct pivot. Like, no, we need to decrease our time. So we went back to the drawing board. We had to continue to sell, right? You're always selling. You can never stop selling. But we weren't trying to grow. We were just trying to maintain that rate while getting some structure and make this thing more viable. And then we methodically grew, and then we hit 3 million, and then we ran into some roadblocks. We can talk about why. There's one of the pieces of small business that we hadn't figured out yet, ran into some roadblocks that bumped us back down. And then, fast forward and COVID hit and we intentionally downsized and we're like in a very methodical thing that works perfectly. We can talk about that later. But anyway, that leads us to today is, it was all one-time services that we were selling for the first 4, 5, or 6 years. And now the entire business runs based on recurring revenue and it's a services business. So like the thing just plugs away. Everybody's life can work and can happen the way that they want it to. Our team members can take vacations when they want. It's like just handle your work. So like usually once a quarter, somebody's out for like a week and it doesn't really matter. It's like it was a morphing of not this thing where I'm on a treadmill all the time. I want this thing that actually is more like a scooter for me than a treadmill, like a motorized bike, or I don't know. I'm making up analogies now. I don't know if they work, but anyway, that's the story. And like I said, lots of really funny and painful stories in between, but we only have a certain amount of time. So
totally. Well, and maybe we can dig into some of those as examples, but I mean, there's a couple things I love from your journey. One, when you talk about how much you love small businesses and entrepreneurs, I relate very much to that. It's like, I just feel so strongly in the path of entrepreneurship. And, for a lot of different reasons. I think one is I was raised by an entrepreneur. Two, it's like, I see just so many good people in the world working so hard because they are committed to an idea that they can do a certain thing and serve people in a certain way. And then this other piece that you raise about blending software and systems, right, with the other pieces of your vision. It's so interesting because one of my earliest projects in law, I got put on a piece of litigation that was a major doozy. Like, it was so bad. And there ended up being 200,000 pages of documentation. This is physical documentation, right? This is papers that I had to look at and somehow catalog and track. And I was in charge of discovery and had to be responsive to all this stuff. And I actually went to law school with the guy that wrote Excel. Like he was Microsoft's, one of
their... I got you. Yeah, I know. He was actually our client at for quite a while. Yeah.
So he was going to law school just so that he could donate the rest of his career to the ACLU, right? The rest of us were so jealous of him. He was the kid, the guy in law school who had 2 sets of books.
All right. And I should clarify. I don't know if we're talking about the same guy, but the guy that wrote the initial spreadsheet. Yeah. That was like from like Apple, Steve Jobs. Anyway, he's got like thin hair that kind of curls over I can't remember his name off the top of my head because it's been a long time. Like super. We're talking like next level intelligent. Like I like to think I'm kind of smart. And then there's like, okay, you are on a totally different level than me.
This sounds like the same guy, may or may not be, but he quit twice and they kept hiring him back because they needed him to finish Excel. So he went to law school and we were all so jealous that this is the biggest highlight for us. He had 2 sets of books. So he did not have to carry his books from home to school because they weighed like 200 pounds, right? Anyways. Yep. So that was our buddy. And I used Excel. I was like, great. I got to know it. I, before then really didn't. Used it almost exclusively in those first few years of my legal practice as a way to track all this documentation, do the bait stamping, set up certain like methods for what data got entered, how we would label things. Anyways, it was phenomenal and set me on a journey really early in my career to appreciate systems, automation, and the overlap of like, look, if we can do this in law, and then that was a really cumbersome example, but it ended up having phenomenal results for me. If we can do this in law, because I got, after that project that we turned right around and I got assigned to a project that had 400,000 pages. And instead of years of going through it, we had 6 weeks, right? Yep. So the joy now is that I have been able to build a business and a career that allows me to love automation and systems. And I just think it's the only way. And especially for small businesses, like I just don't see how you can survive without the help of somebody like yourself in their business.
Well, so you can't survive without systems.
Yeah.
We happen to help with systems. Yep. And you might need to go to somebody if your brain doesn't think that way. But you can figure them out. So there's a couple of things that are really interesting. One, well, maybe they're not really interesting. I shouldn't preface it that way. A couple of things that came to mind. One is, so when we talk about small businesses, we actually came up with a term internally, and we call it the entrepreneurial business. Mm-hmm. Because if you look at like how people organize businesses, you have big businesses, which it's not like an exact science, but if you do your research and look online, for the most part, big businesses are $1 billion plus in annual revenue. A medium-sized business, they say, is 100 million to $1 billion, generally speaking. And then a small business, this is what I love, is a startup to $100 million. And if you do enough research, they'll actually say that a small business starts at like 7.5 to $10 million. I'm like, okay, let me raise my hand real quick. Just have a question.
Yeah.
Like 98% of business, or whatever it is, 95% of businesses never do $1 million. So
yes, it's huge.
What are we? So we came up with this term, it's entrepreneurial business, and it really applies to, I think it's like $3, $4, $5 million and below. Yeah. You're an entrepreneurial business. And the way that you run that business, or any of those businesses from 10 figures to 6 figures to early 7 figures, is so different than how you run an $80 million company. But if you look at all the resources that have been created, they've all been created for who?
The big businesses.
Small businesses, 10 to 100 million. So you go read, the bigger businesses just go hire the corporate consulting people. But if you go look for books or go look for websites, you have, we can go down the list. You've got, what's the book? You got Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. You have, what's the one by, I can't remember his name now. It's like the most classic, Good to Great. Yeah, Good to Great.
That's the one I was going to say.
You got EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. You got Traction, all these. When you start to read those books, what you start to read in the beginning is just look at their examples. And none of their examples are businesses doing less than $10 million a year in revenue. Not a single one of them. We're talking like multiple tens of millions of dollars in revenue.
That's right.
And it's like, well, I don't think that what I should be doing right now is what they're doing. And here's why. This is like the key distinguishing factor between an entrepreneurial business and a small business is that a small business has one asset, one resource that we don't have. And it's called stupid money, which means I can just go hire somebody and I can throw bodies at the problem.
Yeah. We
don't have that, which means we have to play a different game. And that game really lives in systems. So that which leads to the next point, which I think is a really, really important takeaway. And there's kind of, I guess there's two parts to this. I got like some sub bullet points here going on. It's not automation and systems. It's systems. And automation is one way you can execute systems. This is a really important distinction. You don't go get automation because you want to automate something. You have a system, and then automation can help you execute the system. And systems equal freedom. If I can say this is not just for your business. This is what like landed for me. Growing up, like this is probably the first, like as far back as I can remember, this is a thought that has always rang in my head. You know, when people are like, yeah, when I was growing up, here's what I thought. This is the only real one that I can think of that like stands out really big. I always thought, people would always be like, well, that's the way it's always been done. I'm like, well, I don't care if it's always been done that way. If it's stupid, it's stupid. So my brain was always looking at, well, there's probably a better way. My guess is at this point in time, we probably haven't figured out the best way to do that particular thing. So I'm really interested in how something gets done. If I find myself doing something 3 times, I'm turning it into a system. We call it the rule of 3. If I do it 3 times, that thing's got to turn into a system, and I got to start to make it methodical and make it a repeatable system. And then if I can automate it, I automate it. But if people could understand and believe, I think people understand, but like if you could just believe and fall in love with this idea that systems equal freedom, it'll change your life. When you came out, did I talk to you about the checklist that I put up for my kids?
Probably. I remember being super impressed, thinking this guy has got it together, like family life, structure, business. Like I just remember really appreciating watching you, again, like I said, walk the talk, right?
Yeah. So here's the key with that. It's not family life, et cetera, and structures. It's structure and systems applied across all of those.
Yes.
So I'll give just as an example, because we could be done after this point if everybody would just fall in love with this idea. You figure out systems. You might be like, well, I'm not a systematic thinker. Then you go hire somebody.
Yeah.
Because systems are freedom. If you want freedom, and I'm not going all the way to the edge of so I can sit on a beach and drink my Mai Tai, whatever it is. It's not what I'm talking about. Although that might be it. I'm not excluding that either. But if you want freedom, so here's what my freedom looks like. I coach a high school basketball team. I'm up every morning. I go play basketball. Not every morning, but I'm up. I'll go play basketball. Then I go coach basketball, and I coach from 7 to 9. And then I go home and I'm taking my kids to school, go home, shower, whatever. I start at about 10 or 10:30. I go till about 3. They live 5 minutes from here. So I go pick them up from school. I do training with my son. It lets me go to, like I have kids that wrestle, football, so I can go to their games, take my son to his basketball practice, but I can be around for that. I have 2 businesses that I run. I'm also in charge of the entire Sunday school organization in our church. And then we have games at night, right? And I could go on. And I remember I got 5 kids, like got some things going on.
You have a
and
wife. Let's not leave her out.
I have yes, she can't see this because that was an assumption is that was there. Anyway, summary is, so a lot of people, if I listed out what my schedule looked like, or just the list of things that I have on my plate, a lot of people are like, man, that's overwhelming. It's not. It's not. And the answer is system. So here's a specific example. I'm really trying to, I'm telling you, if you buy in this idea. So we had the traditional, typical problem with young kids when they were growing up in our house, which is in the morning, they don't want to do what you want them to do. They want to watch a show.
Was it only in the morning at your house? We have it more
no,
often.
I'm just focused on the morning right now. I'm just focused on the morning. So, but the morning was particularly rough because like I'm trying to get out the door to work. And my wife is trying to she's trying to manage everybody. And the kids are at those ages where some go to elementary school. We were just starting to get into approaching junior high, but it's like people have to go to school. Some don't have to go to school. And the ones that don't have to go to school want to do, they want to watch shows or whatever. And the other kids don't. And we had slipped into we'll eat breakfast and then you can watch one show. And then it became, I want to watch 2 and I want to watch 3. And I'm like, okay, this has got to change. So system. The system is, the first thing is I need a system for the morning. And the second piece that came out of it is everybody has to do the same things at the same time. It's too hard, with kids that young, because we're talking 5 kids and they were 8 or 9 and younger. So I can't have one person eating breakfast while the other person is cleaning up their room, because we want to eat breakfast together. We got everything together. So I made a checklist. And this is where we talked about this pre-call. You're not a parent if you have not accepted bribery as an acceptable form of parenting. Okay. That's a whole separate conversation. But so we brought in bribery. I made a checklist for every kid. And we have a hallway in our house that has pictures of each kid down the hallway. So the checklist got taped below it. And it was, all right, at 6:45, I think it was 6:45. I could dig it up in Google Drive, but it was at 6:45, you're awake, your bed is made, and your room is cleaned between 6:45 and 7.
All the parents, by the way, are scrambling and taking down notes. I can hear.
Look, however we want to give, I have a copy of it. I'll give you a copy of I can go find it. It's in Google Drive somewhere. This friggin' transformed our household. So it was 6:45 to 7 o'clock. You do this. 7 to 7:15. It's brush teeth, get dressed, whatever. 7:15 to 7:30, we are eating breakfast. And ours was eat breakfast and converse. And I had a little notes that means you have to talk. And then 7:30 to 7:45 or whatever. And it did not take very long and then there was at the end of the week, you brought your checklist. So it was the week and the things you got to do and you checked them off. And if they came hey, can I watch a show? It was is your checklist done? And then at the end of the week, there was a certain amount of money. I want to say it was, they were younger. It was $5 a week or whatever. And so it was depending on the ratio of how many of those things you did, then that's how much money you would get. And then you could go spend your money on whatever you wanted. And there was an override factor that was if I have to tell you to fill out this checklist, you don't get paid money. But that checklist in the morning, we ran it for probably 2 or 3 years. And I'm telling you, if you saw, when I get frustrated in the morning, or if my wife gets frustrated in the morning, you would laugh at the things that we get frustrated at. It's one of those, most of you would be are you kidding me? I can't even get them to do this. And it's not because I'm an amazing parent. It's because we just set a system in place. It's no, you just do this. And there's no questions about it. Run the system, and then you're going to get this predictable outcome. So if you take that one example, and then you extrapolate it across the rest of life, and in particular, the business, it just makes life so much easier. Freedom. Systems equal freedom. There is no other way to freedom than systems, unless you happen to get lucky and throw a Hail Mary, which I am not living my life based on the promise of maybe throwing a Hail Mary. I want to be able to produce it. So anyway, I don't know how we got off on that, but
no, it's actually a really powerful example because in our own life and parenting, my goodness, right? We all, whatever, think we're going to do something a certain way. And then we have kids and it's oh, but we've got a child who's neurodiverse, right? And we had to go get very specific help from a parenting coach who understands how to map essentially the neurology of your child based on their behaviors, and then help you as a parent go, okay, here's how you should deal with that. Guess what she put in place for us? A system.
Yeah,
literally a map. Do this, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. This is how you deal with this behavior. And it was a system, and it was the same every time. And my husband does not listen to the podcast, so I'm going to share this, but there was a long time where my husband couldn't follow the system, right? It was like working against your own neurology, just wanting things to be a certain way. But guess what would happen if we did follow the system? Just worked like a charm. But the problem is you had to follow the system. And I just love it.
Yeah. And so my brain goes to like, well, what are all the naysayers going to say as they listen to this? So can I just talk to a couple of those things real quick?
Totally.
The first overarching principle is this. You could come up with things that would be like, yeah, but that's not going to work. I call them yeah, buts, but yeah, that's not going to work because of this, or because of this, or because of this, or because of this. Mm-hmm. Here's the deal. Okay. If you and I were trying to accomplish something in our business and we raced, I would kick your butt. I am supremely confident in that. And if we took impartial observers and we looked at how efficient our household runs, like on Saturday morning when you're doing Saturday chores or whatever, I'm really confident that we would probably, like, I don't want to say my kids are better. I'd be really confident that the system has produced a certain amount of repetitive behavior. So you can't ignore the fact that when you have people that follow systems, they get better results, period. So there may be a lot of nuances to figure out. And the answer is there are a lot. Like I say it like, oh yeah, I just taped it up and all of a sudden the kids fell in line. No, there was some bribery and there was some coaching that went along with it. But once we got them enrolled, it worked, and it worked really, really, really well. So, and then the other piece on this is important. Some people are like, well, that just sounds so robotic and I want to live free. Great. Let me show you how you live free. Because my guess is you don't want to live free. And it's not like you're like, okay, look, I want to rebrush my teeth a different way every morning. That's where I gain my freedom. No, you brush your teeth a certain way. It's a habit. Same way every single morning, wherever you put your clothes. So what you do is you heavily invest in systems, in the things that bring no extra value for you to actually think about and be free in, so that you can be free in those things. And if we apply that to business, you invest in systems in the business and all the mundane, repetitive things, so that when you're dealing with somebody in person, you can fully show up as a human being. So it's not that it's like, no, everything's got to be systematic and I just walk around, I'm a robot and I check off my list. Like, no, I don't want to have to rethink of what the Saturday chores are that need to be done. I want a checklist so I can go check it off and I can get it done in half the time or a fourth of the time. And then I can go hang out with my son and we can talk trash about a basketball game or about a football game. And I can be a human in that situation. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's, this idea that systems and structure gives us freedom. I mean, the trade-off for like the whole, I want to be free, I don't really want to think about systems, is that you're also inviting tremendous chaos, right? If that's free, if that's freedom to you. But for me, it's like anytime I call them red flag scenarios in my business, like you get feedback from a client like, oh, this didn't really work, or I was frustrated by this. I got an email from a client yesterday saying, this process is taking too long. It's the trademark registration process, by the way, right? But there was a certain piece of it that he just didn't understand. And I realized like, okay, I have an opportunity to go revisit my FAQs, right? And improve that particular piece so that the next person that comes through, we don't have this problem anymore. And literally, I got off the phone with him. 5 minutes later, my system was changed to reflect the fact that I needed to build in better support. Oh, yeah.
Oh, there we go. You froze. So I don't know if I record on your side. You froze for a second.
Okay. So the gist of it, what I was saying was just that we had this problem. Literally 5 minutes later, I updated my system, right? Improved the framework for the next client that comes through so that I could breathe easier. Like, okay, that little problem's been handled. We won't repeat that scenario.
Yeah. And if you don't have like the list of systems to know that to go update, then it's like a problem comes up. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Now I got to go, like, everybody's got to swarm this problem. And then another one pops up, another one pops up. But when it's like, oh, that's right here. Oh, I guess that makes sense. I wrote that like they knew everything about my business and they don't. So if I just change that one thing, okay, that's solved. Now I don't have to worry about it again.
Exactly.
And then the next one comes up. Say like, we went through lots of iterations of the checklist. Mm-hmm. And basically it's the same thing. It's like, hey, this is not working. Okay, we need to change it. There's too much on it, or there's not enough, or the way it's organized or whatever, right? It's the iteration. But when I do that work, I don't want that work to just be a one-time work. I want it to be upgrading a thing that I'm using to create stability in my life so that I can go do the things that I want.
That's right. Yeah, it's huge. So yes. I know before we went live, you talked a little bit about there being a conversation or a particular like 5-point framework, right? That you walk clients through. Do you want to share that with us? I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, for sure. So we created this thing called the smooth scaling system. I mean, it has several things that it does, but the first piece is it's a 5-part framework to organize everything that you'll interact with in your business. So the first key to being able to build a business that's sustainable, that serves your life, that you're not overwhelmed by, that actually serves you, is you have to be able to look at all the different moving pieces and not get overwhelmed. And the key to that is going to be in how you organize it. So here's the analogy to tee this up, and then I'll actually roll through and I'll roll out what the 5 categories are and kind of talk to them. We won't be able to obviously go through everything. I mean, if I could explain everything about business in the next 25 minutes, yeah, it'd be hard to get a hold of me. Okay. I'll just put it that way.
Right. You would be worth more than the time you're spending on my podcast.
And it wouldn't be the same, because then it wouldn't be business. It would not even be nearly as fun. So here's the analogy. Lego sets, right? So if you go buy a Lego set and you open up the box and you dump out the contents, what comes out?
Overwhelm? I'm kidding. Instructions.
No. So what most people say is Lego, like pieces, Legos.
Oh yeah. A whole bunch of Legos. Totally.
Which is not true. What comes out are bags.
That's right. Now, and then you have to open the bags.
Yeah. But here's why the bags. This is a really, really important concept, especially when we start to talk about systems, and it will tee up what we're talking about with the smooth scaling system. So the reason why bags come out is because Lego is not stupid. So we're going to play this scenario out. We have so many Legos at our house, but I take my son down to the Lego store and we buy a 500-piece Lego set. Okay. And then we bring it home.
My kids are still in the smaller Lego sets, right? Okay. So we're not yet to the big boy.
So you get to 500 pieces, they're 250 or whatever, but just think 500 or 1,000. It helps really, really drill this point home. When we get home, there are only 2 possible scenarios about how that Lego set gets put together. Either my son does it, and if I'm buying Lego sets for my son, we're talking like probably 12 or under, 10 or under if they're like really into Legos. Otherwise, you're probably talking 7 or under, okay? 500 pieces. If I drop, so scenario 1 is that they put it together. Scenario 2 is that it gets now given to me and delegated to me to put together, right? Those are the 2 options. Otherwise, it's not getting put together.
See, option 2 is not a thing in my house.
It's not in my house either. I've never put a Lego set together. It's like you bought it, you put it together. So just think, if you drop 500 pieces or 1,000 pieces onto the ground, and then you stick a 7-year-old on weeding through and finding every single individual piece, the next time you go down to the mall, you think the kid's gonna be like, hey, let's go back in the Lego store. No. And if they give it to me and I got to look at that pile and like my son's like, hey, let's go back to the Lego store. It's like, no, we are going over here to the buy a block of wood store that only has 1 piece or whatever, right? So what they realized, there's this concept of you have to be able, I call it modular thinking, and we refer to it as the Lego principle, but you have to be able to look at your business and then break it down into the bags that make it up. And then as we get into business, then it's like, oh, and then these bags live inside of that bag. But you have to be able to go from, I've got all these things like, oh no, there's actually 5, which I'm going to propose. There are 5. I don't know why I did 4, but there are 5 conversations. Every topic, challenge, issue, opportunity in your business falls into one of these 5 conversations. And then from there, you can drill down into some sub pieces. But now I have the ability to organize it and not be overwhelmed. So you said, hey, I got an email from a client. Email came in, the client's like, this is taking too long. Your solution happened to be in one of the conversations is around clients. It happened to be in the journey that you had created, and you had an opportunity to make an update. You might have also found that it had something to do with your team, which is a different bag. And they're not like, while they work together, totally separate. And there's a whole series of things that have to be addressed and discussed and handled and decided in team that have nothing to do with, again, related, but not like overlapping with clients. So the first thing is I got to look at my business and I got to be able to have things fly at me and not be like, oh my gosh, I'm drowning, right? That's the very first thing. So here's the highest level. I'm going to turn this thing on here so we can draw a picture, and you're gonna have to deal with my chicken scratchy handwriting. So 5 conversations, and then we have names for them. So I'll draw sort of this, we'll just go like this, and I'll draw what the 5 are, and then I'll give you the names over on this side. So you've got, here we go. So at the very foundation, I want you to think like brick wall. So we're building a brick wall. These are layers, and they're layered on purpose. The very bottom is leadership. Let's call it leader. This is you, by the way, right? You're the entrepreneur. That's right. You're the leader. No business is going to get bigger than or grow more than the capacity of the leader to lead it.
That's right.
Period. Did you all hear that? I am living proof of it. If I showed you like, this is the trajectory of my businesses. And if I chart my leadership, guess what? It's like this.
And for people who are listening to the podcast and don't see the video, you're watching like a squiggle line of like, looks like mountain
It's
range,
a graph
right?
of growth going up with lots of down dips and then a little bit of up and then up again. And it is the chart for the growth of the business is exactly the same as the chart for my ability and willingness to lead, my capability and my willingness to lead. So leadership is the foundational conversation. And here you get into self-leadership first, and then second is being able to lead other people. Third would be being able to lead other people so that they can lead other people. So you've got some subtopics that would shoot off of leadership that you could dive into. Okay. All right. Now, once you have that, well, you don't really have that dialed in, but the thing that you stack on top of that, what comes out of leadership is vision. And I don't mean vision in like the generic sort of theoretical sense that most people talk about it. Vision has to do two things. It has to be inspiring for anyone that's involved in the business. So it has to like have like the goosebumpy component, but it also has to be tactical and actually define where and how you're going to run in your business. So if I can just come back down here, our term for leadership, we call this inside strength. That's what you're trying to develop and install in the business. Inside strength in the leader who can then create inside strength in the team. The vision we're trying to install is a tactical vision. So tactical vision runs the gamut of it's exciting and inspiring for the people involved all the way up to this is like, is it financially viable and or when is it financially viable? Is it humanly viable? Meaning when I bring team members on, are they going to last? And is this role going to work? Or am I going to have like this revolving door all the way down to like a very tactical, here's where we're going next. So the vision has to incorporate all those. Most of the time where people fall apart is they fall short with their vision is it's either just inspiring. That's like a cotton candy vision. There's no meat to it, but it's like super inspiring. I don't know why I use that example because I hate cotton candy now, but I loved it when I was a kid, right? Then the other side of the equation is there's really three scenarios. It's either a cotton candy, all big picture. The other side is it's all tactical. So like we're going to go do this, but there's nothing inspiring about it. It's like this doesn't even really have anything. Like I don't even know what we're doing here. The middle scenario is you can be tactical. You can have this inspiring piece, but it's not actually practical because you haven't done the work to confirm that the finances work and that that like it works from a time standpoint for the people that you're including. So there are some very specific tools we cover in the tactical vision to make sure you hit on all of those. So you're like, no, not only is this exciting, but I'm confident that this can work and I know exactly where we're going next and I can use it to run the entire business. All right, you can interject whenever you want. I'm just going to go through. So
you're fine. And I'm going to say on this point in the vision, I think a lot of people get this wrong, right? And especially in the bucket of what you call entrepreneurial businesses. Yeah. Do you have thoughts on why this piece is so hard for people to get right?
Well, yeah, we'll go back to what we talked about. We'll go back to what we talked about at the beginning, just briefly. Look at the resources that are available for entrepreneurial businesses. Can you think of a single resource, like a book or like a training program or whatever, that was specifically designed for somebody doing less than $3 million, less than $1 million?
Yeah. I know exactly why. And it's the same reason I built what I'm doing now, right? Is because there's this gap in the marketplace that doesn't serve people that are building legitimate businesses. They're just not the ones that the marketplace talks about.
They're not. I want to create shirts. I want to create shirts like, we are not small businesses. We're not. We are entrepreneurial businesses, and it's very, very different. So what happens is, this is why this ends up happening. If you go do research right now on what you need to put into a vision, what you're going to get is you need a dream, you need a mission, you need a vision, you need a purpose. Let's see, what else do you do? You need to define your values. You need to do your quarterly planning and your annual planning. To make sure you got this vision. You need to have a 3-year plan and a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan.
And you need to put your leadership team in place first,
and you need to put your leadership team in place. You need to have all this stuff, and you're supposed to have this book for your vision. I'm like, look, I don't know if you know what it's like to run a 6-figure company, but it changes way too fast. It's got to be way more practical. So there's no resource for it. So what our job to do is we go to one vision workshop, we try that, and we get excited about it because people are really good at teaching things that sound great, but when you implement them, they actually suck. Yeah. Right. So then we go to the next one and we get this other piece. And then eventually, if you stick around long enough, and if you're really, really attuned to systems, you'll create one that is really practical and works for you. Most entrepreneurs aren't really attuned to systems. They're just like, look, I got this drive. I'm going to go figure it out. I am hyper attuned to systems. Like I'm weird when it comes to systems, and it took me a while to figure that out, but I am. So I'm way like I would blow up the grading curve when it comes to being attention to systems. It took me like 15 years to get to the one that I have now, and I can still see where there's opportunities to improve it. So it's one of those like, it's not there. It's why we created the smooth scaling system. Is like the entrepreneurial business is such, there's such better people. That helps. Anyway, it's so much better. They need something there. So that's why is we're going off of things that huge companies are doing that can spend stupid money to do them when we can't, and we're left to try and filter out the stuff that doesn't actually apply to us.
Yep. And we've got to do it faster, right? We have to do it.
It has to be faster. It's got to be able to iterate faster. It's got to be nimble. It's got to help me figure out what the answer is. And I don't have, a lot of these comes like, let's go try this. Oh, they lost $250 million that quarter. I don't have the ability to lose $2,500 this quarter. So I need something a little bit more sure.
That's right. Yeah.
So
that's huge. Okay. So the third one.
Okay. Third one. So on top of vision, now that we have a vision, which will define when it's financially viable, and then if it's humanly viable, now we can go build a team. I'm going to be really clear. There are some nuances between like what goes into each one of these buckets, and the nuances matter a lot. The phrase, the devil's in the details, 1,000% true. So when I talk about team is not deciding what the roles are going to be on the team. It is building the team. Okay. So out of vision, we have team. And what we call this is you want to install an A-player factory. And I use the word factory on purpose. It's not a flea market. It's not, people say, oh, you only want to hire A players. Not true. You want to know why? You'll go out of business because they cost a lot of money. You want a factory that produces A players and then keeps people at an A player level, right? That means hiring. So like in here, we get into stuff like culture. Yep. What do you want it to be like in your business? And are you clear on that? And just if I can, because this drives me nuts, culture, part of defining your culture is defining your values. Not the way that everybody that all the books you read teach you how to define values. That is such fluff bullcrap. It drives me freaking insane when I listen to people's values exercise and they come up with these things that sound great, but don't do jack squat for their business. Anyway, it's a hot button point. I could derail us. So I'm gonna go back into team. So culture is one. Another piece is how you hire. Most entrepreneurial businesses are not good at hiring. They're afraid of it, but they have all the tools to be great at it. They just need a simple system and understand a couple of different policies to ensure that you get people that can be A players, or at least can be it's funny because you don't even always have to hire A players. You can hire some B players. They work really, really, really well. You have certain roles that need A players and you have certain roles that need B players, and it's totally fine. But the hiring process is, how do I make sure that I'm getting somebody? My favorite quote is, I was at a conference, we were talking about like our hiring process and the stuff that goes into A player factory. And this guy's like, oh yeah, I hired 40 people to keep 4. And I was like, oh, I'm like, bro, it seems like if you just had a better hiring practice, you could have hired 4 to keep 4. That'd have saved you a lot of money, right? That's the idea, is something you're confident in, that by the time you go to make an offer and somebody comes on, you know that they're the right person. And then we get into like on the other side, you start to get into like leadership type stuff. How do you manage, performance manage? How do you keep them at that top level? So team is, I know the roles based on my vision. I know what I can pay them. I know when I can hire them. The vision outlines all of that. This is just, it's about who. Mm-hmm. So culture defines who's coming on board. The hiring process vets what I'm saying I want from culture and what I need based on my vision. And then leadership and performance management make sure that they actually show up and they perform. So those are all teams. So you start to see how they relate, but vision and team are totally different. And when you go to most people, as they start to talk about business, they'll be like, oh yeah, it's people, products, and whatever the P's are they come up with. I'm like, yeah, sort of, but not practically, not when I turn around and go to work. Only when we're sitting in this conference and it sounds really, really clear. But it's not, because down here is where I define the roles I need, which would technically go under people. Up here is where I define who the people are. Like, it's not the same. Mm-hmm. So, okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Leadership, vision, team. And then we've got those. Any other things there? Want to keep going?
Pause for just one moment on team, because you mentioned something that I think really rings true for a lot of small businesses. They get afraid of hiring, right? It feels scary. They don't have money to burn. They don't have time or money to do it wrong, right? And yet they've probably either already experienced doing it wrong, or their peers have, and they're just
been there, done that.
Totally. How to give us just a tip or two about how people can start to think about it the right way so that they can do it right.
So I think I have this habit for whatever reason. I'm like, okay, I got 2 tips and I'm guessing what they're going to be. And then it ends up being 3. So we'll see how many tips.
I have 2 that come to mind.
I have two that come to mind immediately. So number one has to do with understanding the difference. So because what you just said, people, they don't have a lot of money to burn and they're afraid of like, can I afford to hire this person? And like, I don't want to get the wrong person. And the way you sort of rolled them off is the way most people talk about them, as if they're the same thing, like they're in the same conversation. So I'm going to go back to why these things are so different, because those are not the same question at all. And this is the first tip, is recognizing the difference between like what falls into team and what falls into vision. So the first question of, can I hire them? That is not a team question. That is a vision question. If you don't know if you can hire somebody, your vision is broken or not clear. I just like to be a little more dramatic. I don't know if you picked up on that yet. So your vision is broken. If you don't know definitively that you can hire them and then what they have to perform in order for you to be able to afford them, then your vision, it's a vision problem. It is not a team problem. It's not even a leadership problem. It is a vision problem that can be hammered out in an Excel spreadsheet. So that's the first piece, is that if you don't know, it is a mathematical problem that's a part of vision. Now, once you know, and here's the key. The key is, this is for the dramatic effect as we go to the camera here. Okay. This will
be really good for the video, for the folks on video.
Yeah, for the people on video. I just flipped from like showing a paper I'm drawing on back to like close up to my face. And now after that joke, I can't remember what I was going to say. Hold on a second. What we're talking about, vision, knowing if you can hire people.
Yep, a mathematical problem.
Okay. Here's the kicker. The confidence to go higher, the confidence in where you're taking your business it's a mathematical component of your vision. I remember going through this exercise with one of my buddies, Chris Smith, Campfire Effect. You may know him. You met him. So we were going through this and he's like, well, how do I know if I can hire? I'm like, it's a vision. And I didn't have it organized like this at the point, because this is like before I met you. This is way back in the day. It was like the last time the Cardinals went to the Super Bowl, which I think was like 400 years ago. So but when I was talking with him, he was like, well, how do I know? I'm like, well, we create this vision that says, if I hire this sales rep, there's an assumption about what that sales rep is going to produce. If they produce that, and I have this vision that is the part of the vision is this mathematical equation, we call it math. But if I have that team member, then they're going to produce this new revenue. And when I run that down my expenses, even with that team member, I now have extra profit. Like, that's how you create the confidence. Like, okay, well, here's what it's going to take. If they come on and they're producing this, and then you have to decide, am I going to pay for this out of savings? Am I going to roll the dice? Well, if you roll the dice, you're paying for it out of savings. Or am I going to run my business where I go get the extra revenue up front and then I hire somebody? So I've been down all the roads. My personal preference for peace and calm is the way we're doing it right now is we have everybody flexes a little bit, takes on a couple of extra clients. It creates the extra revenue. We go hire somebody and then they pick up their own slack, and then everybody flexes again. That way we have the recurring revenue to pay for an entire employee before we ever hire them. Yeah. And then we just shift the workload over. That's not the only way.
But I've heard this before, and I like the idea of, kind of this flex and build as you go. When you have the revenue to hire somebody, is that you have their annual salary in the bank, or is that 3 months until they?
So it depends on your business model. Your business model is either recurring or it's one time, and it could be a split. Ours is recurring by choice, on purpose, very intentional. So for us, we're adding recurring revenue, and for us, the recurring revenue has to be at a certain point. We look at the recurring revenue that's hitting next month, the month after, and the month after. So 3 months out all the time. Those three have to hit certain benchmarks. And when they do, then we go hire somebody. And if while we're hiring, they dip back down below, we stop hiring until we push them back up. If I'm running a one-time business, like a one-time sales business, then I would do it differently. What I would do is I would make a conservative guess about how long it will take for that person to be up and running and performing. And by conservative, I mean, whatever first comes to your mind, double it.
Yeah. Yep.
That's your guess. And then what you do is you do your selling and whatever until you have that much money set aside in savings, not earmarked or allocated for anything else. And then you go hire them. And you're very clear when you hire them, hey, this is what we have for you. You have to be performing at this level by this time. That gets back into team and management and performance, right? But that's how you create that. That's the part of the vision that says, hey, I can go hire this person once I have $50,000 in the bank, because it's going to take 6 months and they're a $100,000 a year employee. I got $50,000 in the bank sitting there. I don't need it for anything else. I'll go hire them and be very clear that it's going to take 6 months. And in my mind, what I'm thinking is 90 days.
Yeah.
That's the approach that you would take. And then it's like, oh, I know, like, I have no question. I will never again. I almost ran our businesses. Literally, I almost put ourselves out of business like 3 or 4 years ago. It was more like 4 years ago, but because I didn't do that. That was one of the last pieces that clicked in, like, oh, that's the piece that I'm missing. And so what happened is like, well, no, we're going to hire the people and then they're going to go produce the revenue. But we didn't plan out the time, nor did we have the money set aside in savings. And then when it started to dip, we didn't lead it. So like that one was a vision problem. And it was also that we weren't managing the team to perform it. Anyway, there's, again, like I told you, lots of sad, painful stories in the history of this one right here. Okay. So we'll go back to this picture and I'll describe it for those of you that are just listening.
Perfect. So we've got,
you need to click on that link and watch this video. It's way more fun. All right.
Oh, totally.
All right. So leadership, which is about you. You've got a vision, getting it documented. Now we've got team. We can build a team because the vision tells us which roles to fill. Team is about how you make it be a team that, like, I did a presentation a while back, and it was called How to Build a Team of People That Kick Butt and You Love to Be Around without the hire than fire carousel. And that's basically what this idea of this, it's a player factory. This is what we're talking about. So team, now you have a team. Okay. So the next one is ops. And the way I think of this is like, cool, I hired this team and I got all these people that they're like, we're here. If they're just like walking around, bumping into each other, we're not getting anything done, right? So now we've got to be super systematic about how we get stuff done. So we call this implementing a clockwork cadence. And this is like, I want my business to hum like a well-oiled machine, right? So clockwork cadence has to do with, do you have a picture? You actually take this last piece of this roadmap out of vision actually governs clockwork cadence. It's the piece that blends your vision with your ops. And it basically says, here is the phase of business that we're in. Here are our priorities. Here are the active projects and the on-deck projects in the most simple format possible. I can show you right now at 6th Division, every single project that our entire company is working on. I can show you what's coming next. And it forces clarity and focus for the entrepreneur. It's my favorite tool out of any tool that we use in this entire thing. It's called the roadmap. So you've got that. Then you have, how does communication flow, which is a combination of, like, do you use Slack? Do you have meetings? What goes into Slack? What happens in meetings? When are your meetings? Who comes? What's the agenda? How do you document it so you don't show up at the meeting and be like, hey, what did we talk about last time? How do you not have a bunch of like orphan messages go out in Slack where it's like, oh, I asked you about that last week and I assumed you had it. It's like, well, why did you assume that I had it, right? So there's communication flow. There's how you get work done. So all work in a business is either like it's your job, so business as usual, or you have a project. How do you delineate what your job is for all the different roles? And then how do you categorize and organize the project? And then how do you actually get the projects done? How do you meet? How do you talk about them? So all the elements that go into ops, that's what lives right here. So you've got, again, leadership, then vision, then team, then ops. And if we were doing the like above ground, like below ground foundation, this line right above ops is where the earth line meets. And then what you actually see in a business is the last one, which is clients.
Yep.
This is the client journey. It's everything that you do to get clients, everything you do to convert clients. It's all the automation, the technology, the strategies, it's all those sorts of things. And we say what you want here is this thing called an automatic client journey, which is a client journey that has amazing experiences, that runs like clockwork because you put systems in place, and in the appropriate places, you use automation to execute those systems. So your ops, your team, your vision, your leadership is the foundation that's underground, that's going to dictate how well you can go get and keep clients happy, which is that top piece. And like we talked about, none of this, you can't have a vision greater than your capacity to lead it. You are literally not capable of doing that. You can't build a team better than the vision that you created. You will not attract the people if your vision is weak. You'll run out of money and you'll have the wrong team if your vision isn't accurate. Your ops, you cannot have amazing ops if you have crappy people. Yeah. Can't do it. And there's no way you can consistently get and keep clients if all of this is shambles. And for the naysayers, I like skeptical people, but for the skeptical people, they're like, yeah, but what about the business that is like crappy and it still works? I'm like, great. Are you going to like say, yeah, but about this whole framework, because we're talking about the business that you don't want to be a part of? That's not what we're talking about. You cannot have a business where everybody can show up, be excited about what you're doing, and have a meaningful role to contribute in the business, where the business can create a meaningful outcome and all of the people involved have enough time and energy and can focus on then living the rest of their lives. You cannot do it, period. So anyway, so that's the smooth scaling system.
I love the piece that you describe about here's what people see and here's what's below ground, right? It's an interesting way to think about it, because I think a lot of us don't think of it that way. For the folks, because I want to focus on the operations, right?
Okay.
Is that where you do a lot of work? Is the operations right? Here's how the machinery fits together. Spend some time, right? Because you want things to work like clockwork. When I think about your business, how you support your clients, et cetera, I picture you in that box, but it sounds like you probably help them across.
Yeah. So, okay. So the nuance in all of this, and then before we're done, make sure I show you how these five conversations, I want to make sure we just hit on how you use this as a diagnostic tool to figure out where the actual problem is.
Excellent. Because some of those, are intertwined.
Yeah. So the key in here, I'm going to introduce, I realize I've introduced some different terms at the risk of overusing terms that I like to use. I call it the string cheese principle. And here's why. So excluding the weird people that just take a bite of string cheese off the end, which is weird. Like you can debate it if you want, but it's just weird. So you look at a piece of like a string of cheese, this whole thing, and it's like, I got one thing right here, right? But it's not actually one thing. You got to peel it apart to identify what the different things are. That principle is so important. So when we look at this, what you were saying, I'm just going to go back to the picture and then I'll overly describe it for those listening on audio. You have client and then you have ops. And when you said ops is clockwork cadence, you're like, yeah, that running like a well-oiled machine. What you were saying is, I imagine that's where Brad is. Brad lives in that to make sure things run like a well-oiled machine, so we take care of our clients. Clockwork cadence has nothing to do with what the clients see. It's underground. It's another one is front stage, backstage. So the client journey, the experience that the clients have, the technology you use, the CRM that you use, the webinars that you do, the lead magnets, the follow-up, the client, all that stuff is client journey. So when you went and you said, hey, a client responded and said, I got questions or this is taking too long, what you fixed was actually what? You tell me.
Client journey.
You fixed your automatic, you didn't upgrade to your automatic client journey. It was not a clockwork cadence. The process by which you made that change falls under clockwork cadence. This is an internal operations thing. So now imagine if your team's bigger and that wasn't a 5-minute fix, it was a week and a half fix. Or your team's the same size and it's a week and a half fix. The question is I get some information that this needs to be upgraded. Now I've got to capture it. I've got to communicate it. So where do I go? Does that go into Slack or is that going to go into a black hole in Slack? Does it go onto a meeting agenda where I make sure that it gets covered? And then once it gets covered, who decides and when do they decide? How does it turn into a project? And then who owns it? How does that get broken down? When does the work get done? When do we report on it to make sure that it got done a week and a half later, right? Like all of those pieces. So clockwork cadence is the internal piece.
Excellent.
And then automatic client journey just has to do, or the client piece and automatic client journey just has to do with the steps that your clients will go to as they go from eyeballs to leads to clients to really, really happy clients. And then everything you do to try and facilitate that or increase that.
Yep. So when you're working with your clients, like doing the work that you do, where are you spending time with them?
Okay. What are you asking me exactly? And the reason why I say that is, do you mean where, like currently in the evolution of 6th Division, what is my role? Or do you mean as 6th Division as a whole, where are we spending our time with clients?
Yeah. So let's talk about your business, 6th Division as a whole, right?
Yep.
What pieces is 6th Division helping their clients with out of that map?
Perfect. Yeah, perfect question. So we'll go back to it just for those that are watching. So we are exclusively right now, if I pulled up our roadmap document, the one that I said that I loved, it's like, hey, here are the phases. The current phase is 100% automatic client journey. That's everything we're doing is focused on that. So if you come buy anything from us right now, it will be all about how do I get and keep clients? How do I deliver an amazing experience from eyeball to lead to client all the way throughout the entire process? How do I get that dialed in? It's 100% automatic client journey. That's the current phase. Now, at some point, middle of the year, and I'm kind of, because if we get to me, I'm a little bit less involved. I'm a lot less involved in the standard day-to-day operations of what is kind of core 6th Division right now. What I'm starting to work on is the trainings that are the rest of this. So over time, what will happen is it will be all of this, and we'll probably take the team that does automatic client journey and we'll spin them out and have them branded as a team. Probably like client journey engineers is one we're playing with. And then depending on where we decide to go with these other layers, there'll be teams that specialize in the services or the coaching around each one of these layers. And that's sort of like, and literally, if you look at my roadmap, it's like we do this, and then next we offer all of this. And then maybe like the further out you go on your roadmap, the less detail you have. So it's just like, I just put as much detail as I have, and then I can move on. So it's all automatic client journey. The only time where the rest of this comes into play is as part of the delivery. I get on calls with clients once or twice a week. And when they get on with me, everybody knows that we're creating this. And I've told them, look, at some point I will charge people for this, but because you're in this program and you're able to get on these calls, you ask me any question and I will give you whatever tool I have, and I will walk through anything I have through the entire framework until such time that I've turned it into an actual product, and then I can justifiably charge you more money for it. So I'm creating it and I'm using it and I'm doing all that right now. But if you like officially come to Sixth Division, it's 100% automatic client journey. And that's a focus. Like everybody on the team knows exactly what we're up to, and it's all around that.
Totally. Well, and it's a massively, like, each of these are, chunked out like conceptually in the way that you've just shown, but the client journey is huge. I mean, the level of thought, even going through the experience with your business, 6 or 7 years ago that I did, the way that you think about and execute on like creating a client journey, I just think most people don't think about in the level of detail that you demonstrate.
Yeah. And this is one of those, like, the biggest roadblock right now to sort of take smooth scaling out. And this may be helpful for someone listening who has like a big thing that has lots of different pieces, is I'm resigning myself to the fact that in order for me to maintain and create the life that I want, which is not on a beach, but it's coaching more basketball. Like, it's just in order for me to maintain the stability that I've created with all the things I have going on, I can't be the face of this. Yeah. Which is like this internal struggle. Because I don't know if you can tell, but I kind of like I like the teaching, I like the coaching, I like sort of the entertainment sort of MC thing. And I'm realizing I can't, because there's so many details. The devil literally is in the details. And as an entrepreneur, you either can understand and manage the details, or you will lose. Yeah. You don't get to be like, oh, well, that's just too much. I can't handle all that.
Let's just wing it. Yeah. Let's just wing it and see how it goes.
Then you're going to lose. And so you have to be able to manage all of it. And as an entrepreneur with the system, you can manage all of it. But as the person trying to create the system and dive into the nuances, like, no, like we got Jake Talbert. He is basically the GM of automatic client journeys. Like I've got to transfer that to you. Yeah. And I'm just sort of the overseer. My job is to make sure that all the pieces as we grow this, that they all continue to connect and relate. And it's like, nope, that is not in automatic client journey. That's in clockwork cadence. So you don't get to claim that. That's got to live over here. That'll be my job, but then I've got to go, it's the next layer of leadership. So I've got to up leadership to be able to bring people in that can be the faces of that. It also is an upgrade division, and then you got to upgrade team, like all the way up and down. So it's an interesting challenge that I have not ever faced yet, because I've never had something that's like, this is bigger than I can keep track of all of the individual details and then continue to iterate and innovate on the details to make it better and better. I mean, it's in automatic client journey with Sixth Division. When I say we grew to a $3 million business, we grew to a $3 million business with a single service that we offered. Yeah. And it was a one-on-one service. And that's not to be like, oh, look how cool we are. My point in saying that is we never even scratched the surface of anything group coaching or any online courses or any sort of physical or like software related products. So you think about it, that's a $3 million business. And if we had got our model right, we could have kept scaling it to go higher. Yeah. But that's only one. That's one piece, one type of offering out of one piece of these 5. Yeah. And I fully believe that I could go replicate and create back to a $3 million business across every one of these, because not every single entrepreneurial business, they all have to deal with them, but there are so many that are struggling with each individual thing. And really, if you start to look at the phases of business, it's really clear, like I got to do this first and then this second, like there's an order that you have to run through. So it's just, anyway, you asked a question around that, but it's really interesting. There's so many things that now it's like the next leg. I got to get somebody else to start to handle some of this that can think, innovate, and create. And I got to figure out how to manage it all.
Well, yeah. And I suspected, based on everything that you just walked through, I was like, this is really interesting. Is Brad's company on the eve of like evolving into a whole new, area of offers or products or whatever, because I could imagine that in the delivery of your services, which are helping people at that client journey phase, you are seeing what happens when there's breakdown points in all of those other buckets.
It's like, hey, this funnel's not working. That's called a vision problem. That is not a client journey. Alert. We are having the wrong conversation. Yeah. And one of the biggest challenges is you have no idea how many conversations we had about how to slice and dice and roll this out. Because one of the challenges is people are not buying this, like all of this.
Right.
They're looking for specific pieces. So now it's like, well, how do I package it, but also still have it be a part of a framework? So that's what we're working through. And we're being intentional and methodical because of what I'm committed to creating for my own personal life. I didn't mention it as part of vision because it sort of fits into that, but like the very foundational piece, if I can just draw this, it lives right between leadership and vision. There's a document right here that I wish I would have had when you came out, because it's the most important. My favorite is Roadmap to Run the Business, but it's called The Return. And The Return is a document where you define what you want to get first. It's the first document that everybody should fill out, because then every decision you ever make about your vision or your team or your ops or your clients, any of those has to align to your return. So like I wake up at least, it's probably once every 2 days. I wake up or there's some point in the day where I'm like, I can see exactly what this is. I can see the impact that it'll make, and I can see how we can make it amazing. We can do it better than anybody else has ever done it, specific for this audience. And I'm like, we got to go. And then I'm like, okay, hold on. If I do that, then I'm not around for my kids. I'm not around for this. So I have to like step back and be like, nope, there's a vision in place. And here's how we make it happen. And actually the vision already states that as soon as I get X number of people into our lab program at this price point, it means I can go hire this person to do this thing. And then I already know how to get there. I just got to calm myself back down. The return is what keeps me anchored. Because if I didn't have that, then I would be having entrepreneurial seizures all the day long within my entrepreneurial business about the different things I would go. And then it would be for everyone on our team, it'd be like riding a friggin' bronco or a bull in like a bull riding contest, which I've done that before too. I've made them all. It wasn't pretty. So anyway.
Well, and I think honestly, that analogy of riding a bronco or a bull is how some people feel about their businesses all the time, right?
Yeah.
Is that they are just on this ride that they don't have control over in some ways. But that piece, I mean, I love actually that you brought that up at the end about the return. Like it is a non-starter for me to have to wake up 2 hours before my kids, stay up late after my kids, and be stressing all the time. And that's not to diminish some business that you have to go through that phase. That's not what I'm saying. So what I mean when I say a non-starter is if that's the way it's going to be forever, no. Yeah. Right. There are some growing pains.
I've got to be able to see. It's okay if I can see the path of how I climb out of it and then I make progress. And even if I adjust in the middle of it, but if I don't, going back to the vision. So once I know what my outcome is, then I create a vision of how I'm going to get there. And the vision captures who am I going to serve and how so that I can get there. But now I have to create the path of where am I now to the place that I want to be. And then I can upgrade my return and I can go to the next spot. But if I can't create that vision and be working towards it, then like my personality is like, literally, I can't make myself do work. And this, no exaggeration. I cannot make myself do work towards something where I'm like, that's not going to give me what I want. Yeah. There has to be some connection. I do not possess the ability to do it. It's like, I got no drive, no motivation. So I have to be able to A, know what I'm trying to do. And then B, be able to create at least the steps. It rarely ends up being those steps, but I can adjust and pivot, but I've got to be like, yeah, I could work that way. Okay, now we can go. There's a chance that I could be successful. If I can't see that, man, that is a dark place to be in all the time.
Oof, yeah. Well, and I do think people get stuck there. They get into a place of like, this is just how it has to be for now without actually looking at what are the next steps to get out of this, to change it.
Been there a couple times. Yep.
Totally.
So true. I mean, the reality is this entire thing was built for me. 100%. And like, no joke. It was like, this is what I needed this to be able to run the business. Otherwise there's no way. I got 5 kids and I want to do, I'm like, there's no way. I've got to be able to do this in a way that's more systematic. And people come out like you came out and we're talking about stuff. And like I don't know how many people I told about like the checklist at home. And then we start to show these little pieces here and they're like, whoa, hold on, wait, what? Talk to me more about that. I'm like, all right, there might be something here. And the gift that I've been given to manifest into the world is this idea of systems. So I look at it, I'm like, well, duh, that's obviously what you would do. And it's because, again, I love music. And this will tie back to what you said at the beginning around like a meaningful contribution, something that people want to do. I love music. I can kind of play the piano because my parents made me when I was growing up. I can kind of sing, but like literally if I start to try and sing too much, like I'll get lightheaded. I get like my throat, it doesn't really work. But I love music and I love listening to it loud. I believe music was designed to be felt more than heard. I love it.
Well, and which I will reflect back to you was one of the core components of your in-person experience, right? I remember like your Marshall speaker or whatever.
Yep,
and like
it was a Marshall speaker.
Totally. And and so I lived that as part of the experience that you create for your clients, probably still do. And it's, it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm driving home and I'm listening to whatever it was. And this thought just popped into my head. It was like, because like every once in a while when I'm listening to music, I'm just like, this is so freaking amazing. Like the thought pops in my head. I am so grateful that music was created, like that it's a thing. And I know that if it never was, I wouldn't even know the difference. But man, I am so glad that it was created. And then the thought, like from there, the next thought that evolved was, and I'm really, really glad that there are people that recognize that the gift that they were given was music and that they did something with it. And then the third thought, like the evolution, right? This is like the grandchild thought, I think is what we're on. The grandchild thought was, okay, what's my gift? Oh, my gift is systems, organized thinking, and how to get stuff done faster in a more organized way. So I can create the same excitement that I get when I listen to really, really good music that's put together really well. I can create for the people that appreciate systems, organization, they're needing that. So, and it's the same thing that everybody else. There's a gift that you have. One of my favorite videos about it, if you look it up on YouTube, it's a Steve Harvey. He talks about stop chasing your passion and start chasing your gifts. It is the most phenomenal video about like discovering what you're really meant to do. It's just so good. And he makes a clear distinction between passions and gifts. He's like, the Bible talks all the time about gifts. Guess what? It doesn't say one time. It doesn't say anything about your passions. Stop chasing your passions and stop being jealous of other people's gifts. Figure out the thing that you just do. And in summary, it says gifts are the thing that you do the best with the least amount of effort.
Yeah.
And then you go anyway. So that, again, systems. I want this to be systematic so that I can go spend time doing the thing that I love best. So right now I got a business that runs. I don't have to, I meet with Jake and that runs. And what I do literally is I come in here and I do group calls with clients. That helps me serve them. And it helps give me more fodder and better learning for what I'm creating here. And then I create this stuff all day long. That's it. That's what I should be doing. I don't need to be doing anything else.
Right.
And that's ultimately the idea. Like you're running a business. That's what you want to get to is there's a thing. Your thing, by the way, might not be in your business.
Yeah.
It might be that you've created a business that runs so that you can create the income that you need so that you can go do, like, I could just as easily be like, yeah, like, look, it's maybe my gift is basketball and coaching. Right. Great. Then I built this business that runs. It takes care of the people that are here so that I have the freedom to go spend my time in that gift. Like no matter how you slice or dice it, whether your gift is your business or your gift is something that sits out of your business, you have to tame your business in order to actually be able to live in your gift.
Well, and this whole thing about passions, gifts, the reality is what you've just described is there is a way to recognize and utilize your gift so that you can, whether it's in your business or out of your business, go do your purpose, go work on your passions, right? They're related. They don't have to be the same thing. And I really love what you said about that, your appreciation for music. And aren't you so glad that there are people in the world? And you think of even just for a moment, the artist's journey or the musician's journey, like that is a freaking phenomenal mountain to climb, especially in face of cultural messages, right? What they hear about early on about it's not worth it and it doesn't pay well and blah, 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 blah. For them to stay committed and get to a point of mastery and, creating something in the world that the rest of us are like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you created that.
Yeah.
The parallel to entrepreneurship and each of us like creating a thing that people reflect back to us. Like, I'm so glad you created that in the world.
Yeah.
What bigger reward or joy can you get? Right. It's just phenomenal. I love that as an illustration.
Yep.
Brad, you're awesome. You have given us so much to think about today. So I have just 2 questions left for you. One, where do you like for people to find you? For those that are listening, they're like, oh my gosh, I've got to check out Brad. I need to know what 6th Division is doing. I need to follow their journey. Where should they go find you?
Okay. So if you want to if client journey is the thing, you're like, oh, that automatic client journey and that what they do there, go to sixthdivision.com. It's SIXTH division.com. I'm sure there'll be a link somewhere you can click on to get there.
Yep.
If you want to get on the waiting list and start to get some things we drip out around smooth scaling, the entire framework. And one of those would be if you want to get access to that video I mentioned around the hiring thing. I'm just now remembering that's on the thank you page.
Yeah.
If you go to smoothscaling.co.
Okay. And I will share these links for
so you have
anybody
that
listening.
Smoothscaling.co. There's a page there that kind of talks about what we're doing here. And then there's a form you can fill out on the thank you page. There's 3 different videos I put on there that cover different topics. One of those topics. So there's 2 videos at the bottom of the main page too. And then there's, I think, 3 different videos on the thank you page. I don't think we copied them, but maybe we did. I don't remember.
Just over delivering all over the place, Brad.
It's the team one. And then there's another one called Why I Scaled Back to Scale Up, which basically talks about why I sucked and what I tried to do to fix it. So you get to hear the story. And that's not like false humor. Like I just flat out sucked. And talk about that story. And I don't remember what the third one is, but there's some stuff there. So smoothscaling.co.
Okay.
If you want to get some resource around that. As far as me personally, I'm a little bit of a digital hermit.
This is good.
The best place would either be, the best place would be Instagram. And the reason, or Facebook, if you want to follow me. Occasionally I'll be like, I'm going to post something. You can go there and check out all the dumb crap that I do with my kids. Sometimes, I mean, I laugh at it, but I was also there. So that's more like I'll post some thoughts and ideas periodically. That kind of ends up being more about documenting stuff I'm doing with my family. But so outside of that, so 6th division for automatic client journey specifically. Smooth scaling is the wait list for the entire smooth scaling thing. And then Facebook or Instagram. I have a Twitter account. I follow nobody. Nobody follows me because I deleted it and restarted it. I have no tweets. I'm on LinkedIn and I don't do anything. So that's not a good place to reach out to me. If you're like dying for like a specific request or whatever, you can email me, Brad at 6th division. And it will go to Erin on my team, who will be like, this will be what she'll say. Hey, I'm helping Brad with his emails. I'm going to talk to him on Monday. Yeah. So anyway, so you can also drop an email and as long as you're not crazy, right, then we'll see what we can do within reason. So
if you're crazy, just don't do any of this.
That's all right. I mean, I'll just tell you that I'm not going to do it, but you can ask. Like I always tell people, try me. I can't guarantee anything, but I can guarantee that if you don't try me, then you ain't gonna get jack squat. So you might as well try it.
There's that. I personally love hearing about the digital nomad piece. My dream is that I, create a business where I never have to spend any time on social media. So the one last question, and then we'll let you go. We've covered a lot. Obviously, you have a body of knowledge that you've developed over many years of, working in businesses and creating your own. What's one thing that somebody listening today, like one thing that you wish you knew earlier in your journey that somebody could be doing something about right now?
That's a great question. And there's so many different places to go. So I said it before and I'll say it again, because this is where I would start. I don't care who it is. Anybody that comes and asks me a question about like, hey, this and wherever it is, tactical vision, A-player factory, clockwork cadence, automatic client journey. You know what my first question is? What's on your return document? Now, I don't say that because I don't know what the return document is, but the very first question is, well, I don't know. What are you trying to do? Because every one of those questions is that it depends. The answer is actually dictated. A good decision in any of those areas is determined by what you've written down on your return document.
I love that. I love even the name, return document.
Yeah. So we'll do this. I have a little training video and I'll give you the return document, but I don't have anything set up. So here's what you have to do if you want it, listeners. Smoothscaling.co, get on the wait list. Yes, I know. I realize that that's a little bit self-serving. It was not my plan from the beginning. You have to fill that out and then hit reply and be like, yo, I heard you on Heather's podcast. You said you'd give me the return document, and then you got to be patient with me and I'll get it to you, but I can get it to you. But that is the very first thing. And then there's one other piece I would add to it. So it would be that that how to define that.
Yep.
And then the second piece is that I could create whatever I want on my return document, and it's not that far away. That would be the other thing. If I could remember, like, it's not, we're like, oh, I got to build this $3 million business. No, you don't. My business serves me better as a $1 to $1.2 million business than it did as a $3 million business. Most people, once they get their return dialed in and we actually do some work on the vision, realize it's like, no, you're not 7 years away. You're like 6 months away if you just do this and do this and do this. So having the return to anchor me, and then realizing two things. One, I can create it. like a belief that was just like injected into my soul. And second, realizing it doesn't have to be that far away. Now, depending on your return, it might be further away, but they're usually significantly closer than we think they are.
I love that. I just want to sit with that for a minute. First of all, if you're listening and you can get access to Brad's return document by just doing those couple of things, go do them. We will share the links in the show notes along with anything else Brad wants us to share. Brad, thank you so much. You showed up and you stayed over time and we had lots of fun and people are going to love this. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, you are welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.